Here we have a transformations applied to the reciprocal graph 1 over x. So we start by first of all sketching the original f of x, just to remind ourselves what the base function 1 over x looks like. Here we go, 1 over x, y is equal to 1 over x. This is our f of x. Remember, we have asymptotes here at x equals to 0, and we have another asymptote here at y equals to 0. Part A says sketch the function f of x minus 2. So we can see straight away here that this is the case where we've got minus 2, which is affecting the y-axis, translation in the y-axis by vectors 0, minus 2. So everything gets translated down in the y direction by minus 2. So it affects all the y coordinates. So y equals 0 now becomes y is equal to minus 2 is the new asymptote. Everything else remains the same. So my new curve is this. And this is the curve y is equal to f of x minus 2. We've stated the equation of the asymptotes y equals to 2, and the other asymptote that we've got is x equals to 0 remains the same because it's unaffected by the y translation. Part B asks us to find the coordinates of the point where this curve f of x minus 2 cuts any coordinate axis. So let's see where it cuts the coordinate axis there. Now, in order to determine this point of intersection, we need to first determine the equation of y equals f of x minus 2. I'll start by writing down the equation of y equals f of x, or the equation f of x. I'll write down f of x is equal to 1 over x. Now, what we've got here is f of x minus 2. f of x minus 2. So as you can see here, the f of x remains the same. So I should still have 1 over x. But then the additional thing that we've got is a minus 2. So we're going to have another minus 2 added at the end. So there's my minus 2. So that's the equation of y equals f of x minus 2. I'll write that down in terms of y, so I'll just say let y is equal to 1 over x minus 2. And this is my function f of x minus 2. So now that I've got the function, I'm going to determine the point of intersection. Now this point of intersection is crossing the x-axis. So where does it cross the x-axis? Crosses the x-axis when y equals to 0. Crosses x-axis at y equals to 0. So 0 is equal to 1 over x minus 2. 2 equals to 1 over x. So x is equal to a half at this particular point. So the coordinate is a half. 0 is the point of the intersection with the x-axis. Okay, so that was part B. Part A. Now the third part, part C, says sketch the graph of y equals f of x plus 3. Again, I start by drawing the original f of x. Here we've got f of x plus 3. The plus 3 is inside the bracket. So it affects the x-axis and it does the opposite. So instead of plusing 3, it's minusing 3. So what would that look like? Well, it affects all the x values. So the original asymptote, the asymptote we had, x equals to 0, so x equals to 0 and y equals to 0. The x asymptote will be affected this time, resulting in the new asymptote being at x equals to minus 3. And then we would draw the curve. The y equals 0 asymptote remains where it is. That's what it looks like. We can see the intersection here is at a different point there. So we need to state the equation of the asymptotes and the coordinates of any point where the curve cuts the coordinate axes. So the asymptotes are still this x equals minus 3 and y equals 0 remains where it is. In order to determine this point of intersection, like before, we need to determine the equation of this new function. So what was the original function? Well, let's start by writing down f of x is equal to 1 over x. And here we're looking at f of x plus 3. So what's the difference between this f of x plus 3 and the original? Well, we can see here that all the inputs x have been replaced with x plus 3. So anywhere we see x, we need to substitute with x plus 3. So this would be 1 over, and instead of x, we're going to substitute with x plus 3. So this x value here is substituted with x plus 3. So there's my function f of x equals to 1 over x plus 3. I'm going to let this equal to y, so I'm going to say y is equal to 1 over x plus 3 is my function f of x plus 3. Now I'm in a position to determine this intersection with the y-axis. So crosses y-axis at x equals to 0. Substitute x equals 0 in here, so we get y is equal to 1 over 0 plus 3, which is a third. So the coordinate is 0, third is the point of intersection.